Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since we've done one of these, approximately like 4 versions-ish. The last time we did a DPS ranking was back when Cyrene released. Since then, you know, we've had Nova Flares, we've had Dahlia release, Reviving Super Break, stuff like that, all of our Planet KD DPSs, so I think it's finally time that we go ahead and provide an update. As always, this is free-to-play E0S0 because I only pull E0S0, I'm a free-to-play, and you know, I feel like this is the most relatable form and also what all of my content is based on. So yeah, units themselves, E0S0, and they're only considered in their E0S0 teams. Just as a quick reminder, these are my personal opinions, this is not an empirical tier list, these are just my thoughts, so treat it as a bit of fun, which might cause a bit of discussion. Don't use this to plan your pulls, this is just my personal opinions of these units' power levels at E0S0 and how worthwhile they are investing in my opinion. And with that being said, let's hop right into the rankings, but real quick, if you want to pull any characters in Planet KD, then I have the perfect thing for you, and that's today's sponsor, Lootball.gg. Lootbar is officially back with more secure systems and updated payment methods, so you can top up in games like HSR and Genshin for cheaper, as you can use the code LOCKUP for 5% off on your purchases, and you can receive double on your first top up bonus as you would in-game with the HSR 3rd anniversary, and they have thousands of positive reviews on Trustpilot, so they are trustworthy, and I've used their services myself before. Their services are safe, simple, and secure. All you have to do is enter in your UID and your region in order to get your purchases. So be sure to check out Lootbar with the link in the description. Back to the video. When it comes to what the rankings themselves kinda mean, this isn't 100%, but basically F tier, lol, we all know who's gonna go in here. D tier are the characters I'd say are mostly unusable unless you vertically invest in them, which we're not considering. And also the fact that they're a bit more outdated, so they're less likely to benefit from buffs / Nova Flares. C tier, I'd say, are also mostly unusable right now unless you vertically invest in them mostly, as well as their teams a bit, although they're a bit more modern, so they have a bit more of a chance. B tier is your kind of okay units, usable in some cases, maybe not always going to be able to clear. A tier are your pretty solid units, good enough units. They will clear often enough. Most of the time, but maybe not quite as quick as the S tier units, who are your strong units, and then SS tier, who of course are your OP units who will carry your account. But with that being said, starting off with the ranking, first of all, our F tier king, Yanqing, go ahead and slot right into there. Honestly, wait, actually never, you know what, yeah, we're gonna give him his gray tier, and then switch the D tier to red. Anyway, what I want to do here is I actually want to clump some of these units together, so I'm going to go ahead and place Argenti in the D tier alongside Himiko, Dan Hang, and Baibatulune, as well as Dr. Ratio, as well, actually that shouldn't be like that, and then also Clara. This is just the order in which the characters popped up in my mind. Yeah, I'd say these are the characters which are largely unusable. They're also quite outdated, they're all version 1 units. C tier, I'd say, are characters, you know, I've already said, but these are kind of the ones who've had have a bit more of a chance in my opinion. Akron, from formerly our SS tier queen to now being in the C tier, and then we also have Jingyuan, the king of buffs, but they never buff him enough, and then Yunli, who is a version 2 unit who has been just mostly forgotten about. So yeah, I'd say these two are the 2.0 units who basically haven't received much attention. Jingyuan, version 1.0 DPS, but you know, he's received a bit more attention, so you know, he's not quite as difficult to get into and invest into as the others. And then Jingyu, she obviously had her Nova Flare, but I'd say it hasn't really worked out for the best. And yeah, those are the F, D, and C tiers, and now we can go ahead and start ranking some of the units themselves, starting off with Zila, who actually formerly was in the D tier, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and place Zila in the B tier now. You know, you do kind of want to make sure that the enemy has summons so that you can defeat them in order to max out her damage amplification passive. But you know, I myself used Zila in both teams with Sparkle / Sunday alongside Tribby / Silverwolf, obviously that being base Silverwolf, and it actually did go quite well. We'd get between 3 or 4 cycles on the Nikador boss, which for a version 1 unit is actually pretty damn strong. So you know, I think she definitely does have her use cases where she works. I don't think she's meta all of a sudden, but she's definitely usable, so I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the B tier. Next up we have Blade. I think Blade's fared a bit better than Jingliu since his Nova Flare. Call me biased if you want, because I am a Blade main, but I will say I do think Bladey belongs in the B tier. I just feel like he has more use cases. pieces than Jingliu slightly, or I'd say there's more scenarios in which he works better than Jingliu, at least in my humble opinion, even though they largely use the same team. I just feel like Blade works a bit better with it, mostly because he doesn't have as much of a saturation in his crit stats, so the crit you get from, say, for example, Sunday is quite valuable, also the HP from Hyacinth also valuable. He doesn't suffer from diminishing returns as much as Jingliu, in my opinion. Next up, we have Kafka, who I'm using Kafka just to represent all of Dot. Technically, the main damage dealers in Dot aren't actually Kafka. She's basically the buffing unit, and then, or the enabler, she's more like a harmony unit, and then the actual damage dealers are Hyslins as well as Black Swan. We're not going to be ranking Hyslins. So I'm just using Black Swan to, not Black Swan, I'm using Kafka to represent both Black Swan and Hyslins to make up the Dot archetype, and I'd say the Dot team is an SS tier team. First of all, Kafka's Nova Flare gave it some life, then Hyslins came out, and then it was very strong with the core of Hyslins, Kafka, and then either Cyrene or Black Swan as your third slot, and then after Black Swan's Nova Flare, I'd say that the Dot team is one of the strongest in the entire game. Dot will basically always have a place in the game because it's one of those archetypes which Hoya won't let die. I'd say Break as well as Dot, they just have not let die, because you'll always find buffs for it in Apex Shadow / Pure Fiction. They really do incentivize it, so I'd go ahead and say Kafka team in SS tier. Also, decently F2P accessible as well, because Kafka given out for free, stuff like that, and then Hyslins and Black Swan had quite a bit of space between them, which is obviously nice. So yeah, I go ahead and say Dot is our first SS tier team. Admittedly, there are two DPSs here who actually I'm going to rank at the same time, those being Boot Hill as well as Rappa. I'm going to put both of them in the B tier. I previously had them all in the C tier, because prior to Dahlia's release, I'd say that Break was not very playable. Although I'd say that now they're playable. I just think that Boot Hill and Rappa need specific enemies. They need to be a bit more niche in order to work. In contrast to Firefly, who will work in basically whatever content. SS tier unit, no doubt, with Dahlia's release. Dahlia plus her own Nova Flare. I'd say with just Dahlia, I would have placed her in the S tier, but then she got her own Nova Flare, and I'd say she is firmly in the SS tier now. It just gave her a lot of quality of life, fixed some issues. So yeah, I'd say Firefly in the SS tier, no doubt in my mind. I am trying to speed through stuff here a bit because I feel like when we start getting to the Chrysosairs, stuff will maybe get a bit heated. Well, maybe not heated, but maybe a bit more controversial, maybe a bit more hot takes. Jade is a unit who is usable, although basically only in Pure Fiction. She's definitely an AoE specialist. I'd say she's in the B tier. She's a okay pull. You know, back when Pure Fiction was really easy and you could just clear it with Mini Herta as well as Himiko, that's when I would have had Himiko like up here and then Pearl down here, because I think there was no, Jade rather, because I thought there was no need to pull her whatsoever if someone like, if a standard character in a 4-star could do the same job. But now that Pure Fiction is increasingly difficult after the changes to it, the HP inflation, stuff like that, she does work quite well. If you have a big Herta team, then she will work very well in that, or just run her with anyone in Pure Fiction. Honestly, she's just really great in that, but that basically only applies to Pure Fiction. Moving on, Fei Xiao, I would have originally put in the C tier, but now that she has Ashvale as a teammate, I'm actually going to put her in the B tier. It's not that Fei Xiao herself got a massive buff from Ashvale, it's just that Ashvale carries the team so hard that if you have a Fei Xiao, she's no longer as useless on your account. So yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and put her in the B tier, and now is when stuff starts getting real, the SS, S, and A tiers. Starting off, Herta, who upon release was considered one of, if not the strongest DPS in the game, mostly because of how shilled AoE was in even Apex Shadow, which we originally thought was like a single target / break game mode. Herta became the strongest unit in Apex Shadow, strongest unit in Pure Fiction, obviously strongest unit in Memory of Chaos, obviously because they were putting so many AoE units in Pure Fiction, because, you know, before that we had Rappa, who's Air Edition, then we had Herta, and then Aglaya worked decently in those as well. Although I think she's fallen off so hard with how HP inflation is going, I just don't think she's able to do enough single target damage. Like when you take out the boss's ads and stuff like that, she just doesn't do enough damage. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put her in the A tier. I did previously have her in the S tier, but I think nowadays she is more of an A tier unit. Aglaya is, I said this recently when I was testing out Avenetia in all 3 endgame modes, because Avenetia is the first character I've pulled an Eidolon for intentionally, actually even accidentally. We've never gotten a double in a temple, so well, other than Sparksy Banner, but that we lost to Bailu. So yeah, Aglaya, she is like probably the most E1 dependent unit in the entire game. She feels a bit like Risley from Genshin. I'd say if back in Amphoris I had made the decision to vertically invest in characters, I probably would have pulled for E1 Aglaya, just because I feel like Aglaya is a really underrated unit, but at E0 she has a lot of issues, even though she does have some buffs to her teams. Cyrene, was a nice addition. We do have a free Huohuo as well, which makes our teams even more accessible. You can get Huohuo's E1 as well. Sunday's been out for a decent while. I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the A tier alongside the Herta. I'd say they both suffer from some decent issues in their kit. I'd say A is like the good units, but they do have some issues, which is preventing them from being great. Mighty is a unit who I would have gone ahead and put him down in the A tier, but Cyrene is honestly huge for Mighty. Cyrene plus Tribi. You can also run Cyrene plus Saridra, although I honestly just don't like that team as much. I much prefer the Cyrene Tribi team, and then obviously throw in a Hyacinth as well. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Mighty in the S tier. I think that he doesn't have as many issues in his kit as someone like Hato or Aglaya does. I think he's aged better than them. I think Cyrene is more beneficial. Cyrene fixes more of Mighty's issues than Cyrene fixes for Aglaya's. Cyrene definitely makes Aglaya very solid, but I'd say Mighty is just a cut above, in my humble opinion. Next up, we have Castris, who... Yes, some people might say that her best in slot team is not as free-to-play friendly, but that's mostly if you're looking at it in terms of Eidolons. A lot of teams nowadays require 4 or 5 stars anyway. That's normally their best in slot teams. And I'd say Castris' releases were spread out evenly enough to, if you wanted to pull Castris, I'd say you probably have her full team. Even if not, you still have some solid alternatives as well, just because there's so many options you can put in that team. Cyrene RMC is a decent thing for like a more hyper carry oriented Remembrance flagship. Or you can run her, obviously, with Evernight. Gives you 2 main damage dealers, although Castris, of course, is the main damage dealer. You can run her with Tribi instead of Cyrene as well. That still works well. Hyacinth is basically the must-have unit in the team. And then then you can pick between any of Tribi, Evernight, RMC, as well as Cyrene. So I'd actually say people overstate how not F2P friendly Castris is. I actually think she's decently. I think she's... Nowadays, it's definitely hard to get into Remembrance, but if you have any of the pieces for the Remembrance team, then I definitely say that Castris is, first of all, just damage-wise, she is one of the most insane units in the entire game in her best in slot team, / best in slot teams, any of those variations. She's still very solid in all of them. She will clear basically every endgame mode for you. So yeah, Castris SS tier, probably the best unit you could have pulled in all of Amphorius. Next up, we have Anexa, who I'm going to go ahead and put in the S tier. I was kind of debating between the A and the S tier. On my own account, I'd say that Anexa is probably... I have him on my old account. I'd say he's probably a bit more of an A tier unit on that account, but that's because I don't have Cyrene there. I think if you run Anexa with Cyrene as well as Saridra, I'd say he's more of an S tier unit. I'd say he's kind of on the same tier as Mighty. He doesn't have any glaring issues at E0S0. I'd say the biggest upgrade I honestly think you could get on Anexa is if you have an S1 Sunday, you can run S1 Sunday with Saridra and then skill spam on Saridra thanks to the fact that Sunday is then SP positive, so then you can maintain her speed buff, so you can go attack boots on Anexa, and having attack boots plus a perma -1 speed setup with Sunday whilst using attack boots, I'd actually say is very OP. But if you don't have an S1 Sunday, then Cyrene also very, very strong. I ran him with E0S0 Sunday plus E0S0 Saridra, and it works decently well. Although I'd say it's more A tier, but like I said, if you have Cyrene, then I'd go ahead and put them in the S tier. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Anexa in the S tier. And now is when this might be the hot take of the list. Finon is a unit who I love. Back in 3.7, I had him in the SS tier, because when Cyrene released, that Cyrene Saridra team felt very strong even in sustained content. And then basically in 3.8, when we got that new boss, I was like, wow, Saridra plus Dunhung PT plus Cyrene, I don't remember if I said Cyrene or Saridra, but yeah, Cyrene, Saridra, Dunhung PT, it couldn't clear that. Boss was weak to physical in 3.8. I know he's not the best equipped unit for it, but mine struggled a bit, and then ever since then, it's just been struggle after struggle. He's not the best pure fiction unit. In single target Apoc Shadow, he's very strong. Non-single target Apoc Shadow, for me, it just feels like as soon as it's not single target and you don't get all of the meteor strikes in the specific enemy you want, this guy feels so much worse to play. And then his teams also, in my opinion, feel pretty bad to play. You know, Donhung PT comes out, people are like, oh, you can finally get all of Sunday's buffs. Okay, I'm gonna run him with obviously Saridja's his main support, so I'm gonna run him with Sunday, Saridja, Donhung PT. Womp Womp. As soon as you lose, as soon as that first ultimate is over, the team doesn't feel quite as good to play. Okay, let me run him with Saridja Cyrene instead. okay, this team feels great to play, it feels like there's no issues. The only issue is that the damage isn't enough in sustain comps. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and run him sustainless, and then you run him sustainless, and then you go ahead and have to retry 100 times. You might not even get it, you might not even get the clear, because bosses end up killing you just before you can get Cyrenia's ultimate, because oh my god, is it so painful to run a final team at E0S0. E2, this guy is maybe the strongest E2 DPS in the entire game, but oh my god, at E0 does it drive me crazy trying to make Finon work. And honestly, maybe this is just from pure saltiness and rage and disappointment, because I love Finon, I loved running him on release, but now honestly he feels like he is fallen off just as hard as Herta fell off at E0S0. This is maybe a crazy take, maybe I'm overreacting with, and he belongs in the S tier, but you know what, A tier would look weird with just 2 units, so you know what, Finon, you're slotting it into the A tier. Maybe you can swap Finon with an Nexa, maybe you can swap Finon with Mighty, but honestly for me, Cyrene in sustain feels better to play with Mighty and Nexa than it does for Finon, so yeah, there you go. That is maybe my hot take, in my humble opinion. E0 Finon just feels really bad to play, unless it's some kind of content in which he's really good in. Like I don't know, like I'm saying, if the boss is single target and you're not dying outside of your ult, he feels great to play. Obviously in sustain, in sustainless without dying out beforehand, he feels great. In sustain, he can still feel strong in pure single target, but as soon as you introduce some summons into the fight, his E just does no damage whatsoever. It feels so bad. That's my rant over. Like I said, maybe this is an overly emotional placement, but I'm gonna go ahead and put Finon in A tier just because, man, first of all, I love Finon as a character. I also love his kit. I think it's the coolest kit in the entire game, maybe, until Blade releases, but that's just because I'm a Blade main. Yeah, one of the coolest kits, the best animations in the entire game, insane story plot, amazing, just amazing as a character. Felt so good to play on release, and it just feels like he has fallen off an absolute cliff. Incredibly fast as well, so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the A tier. Saber, I'd say, is a unit who fell off. I thought she was an S tier unit. Honestly, I go ahead and put her in the A tier unit, as an A tier unit. Actually, no, she's not an A tier unit, she's a B tier unit. In my opinion, she has no niche. She's just very mid as a unit. Maybe you can go ahead and put her in the A tier. Maybe this is another hot take from me. I pulled for Saber, and it is probably the biggest regret on my account. I have the version I got her back in 3.4, she felt decently strong. In 3.5, she already felt a bit weaker. And then immediately after that, I was like, wow, I really pulled into the hype. I think the main thing for free-to-plays, and I do want to bring this into consideration, is that banner does not carry over pity from your regular rushes. So if you lose your 50-50 there, or if it costs you a bunch of pulls, you cannot use that on another character. Your pulls are gone. She is just such a trap for your summons. Personally speaking, I think Saber in the B tier. If she gets like a strong unit, I could see her going up in the S tier. I don't think her kit is like Omega scuffed. I just feel like she doesn't have any teams. She doesn't benefit from any of the new content. She'll never have content created around her unless she gets a new support. Other than that, she's basically a forgotten unit, so I'm gonna go ahead and place her in the B tier. Like I said, you could put her in the A tier, but honestly, for me, she just feels so bad. I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the B tier. Archer, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the S tier. I would have put him in the SS tier at the beginning of version 4's start. Actually, did I make a tier list at the start of version 4? I swear I did. I think I must have. I think I'm just forgetting stuff. I must have. I definitely did. I don't know why I thought the last one I made wasn't back in 3.7. But yeah, Archer, anyway, S tier unit after Sparkle. But first of all, Sparkle being more free-to-play obtainable definitely helps him. In the past, I've criticized him for using a niche support who's not isn't really in demand. She's not, as a free-to-play back in the day, you didn't really want to pull Sparkle, back in like the version 3 cycle. But now, first of all, you get it for free. Second of all, she's not a flared, so she's actually a solid generalist action advancer, and also she's stronger than she was before, which in my opinion makes Archer, he was previously an SS tier character. I think with some of the elation units coming out, I'd go ahead and put him in the S tier, but still very solid. Evernight previously in the SS tier. I'd say nowadays she's more of a sub DPS than she is a main DPS, although main DPS Evernight alongside RMC plus Cyrene plus Hyacinth, I used the team for the first time in the 4.2 Abyss against Nikador, and oh my god, is it incredibly strong. So although she is more of a sub DPS, DPS. As a main DPS, I'd still rank her in the S tier. She is still very, very strong. She feels better to play than any of the ones in A or B tier, in my humble opinion, so she's gonna go and stay in the S tier. Sparksy, originally I ranked in the SS tier on the Elation units, so she was the one who dealt with Elation mechanics the best. Similar to Evernight, she's more of a sub DPS now, but you can definitely still run her as a main DPS. It will still work. So, you know, I'm going to go and place her in the S tier there. Ashvale, some people placed in the SS tier. Me, personally, I'm going to go ahead and put him in the S tier. His team definitely isn't complete yet. If he takes more of the main DPS role in a follow-up team, then I could definitely see him going up to the SS tier. If he takes more of a sub DPS role, he'll probably stay in the S tier. And then if you're considering supports as sub DPS, then he might end up being an SS tier unit, but an S tier main DPS. So yeah, I feel like his team isn't really complete yet. It is hard to judge. But yeah, S tier for Ashvale, in my opinion. Maybe when Blade comes out, he'll go up to SS tier, or maybe it will be Blade in the SS tier. We'll wait and see. Or maybe they'll both have to wait for a different main DPS, whether it be Himiko, whether it be, I don't know, some kind of IPC, SP. When Astropolis releases, we'll have to wait and see. And then finally, that brings us on to Silverwolf 999 as well as Evanesia. Previously, I used to have only 3 units in the SS tier for the most part. I'm actually going to go ahead and bump that up to 5. I'm going to go ahead and put both of them in the SS tier. Although, personally speaking, maybe a hot take, I think if either Blade turns out to be a great buffer for Ashvale and he goes up into SS tier, or Blade himself is a very solid DPS and then he'll go up in the SS tier, one unit will have to go down. And honestly, when it comes, I'd pick one of the Elation DPSs to go down, and when it comes to which one's going down, personally, I find Evanesia not only more enjoyable, but also a bit stronger. I've had better clears with Evanesia. I feel like she's easier to optimize and stuff like that. I feel like her team just feels a bit more fluid to me, which is kind of crazy to say, considering the fact that Sparksy is kind of, you know, her whole thing is being a punchline generator for Silverwolf. So if there is a new SST unit, whether that be Ashvale, whether that be Blade, whether that be Himiko, whether that be some IPC, Astropolis unit, then Silverwolf might go down, which is why I'm probably going to update this tier list pretty soon in the future if there are any tiers in the SS tier. If there are no changes in the top tier, then I'll keep Silverwolf here. If there are changes, then she'll be the one to move down, in my humble opinion. If I were to say who is the strongest DPS, it's one of Castris or Evanesia, in my opinion. I'd probably say something along the lines like this. This is how I would rank them in terms of strength. I think Silverwolf 999, don't get me wrong, she is very, very, very strong, but if I had to pick only one Elation unit, then I'd go ahead and pick Evanesia. In my humble opinion, at E0S0, I think Evanesia is just a bit stronger. I have no clue how their future units slash supports will go. Maybe Silverwolf 999 will end up the strongest main DPS in the game. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like, honestly, I kind of wish I had Silverwolf 999 on my main account and then Evanesia on my alt. I wish I had Silverwolf 999 on my alt account and Evanesia on my main account. But right now I have them the other way around. That's because I pulled Sparksy and Yaoguang on my main account, whereas on my alt account I only had Yaoguang. So it kind of made more sense just to pull Silverwolf 999 on my main and Evanesia on my alt. But yeah, for me, like I said, Evanesia just feels a bit stronger. Team feels a bit more fluid, a bit more consistent. I feel like, you know, Silverwolf, when you don't have much MMR, just feels really bad. And then, you know, you have to kind of figure out, do I want the Elation skill in her alt form? Do I not? Do I just want to generate more MMR? Do I want to, you know, how many, do I want to sacrifice the damage in the Elation skill to get more MMR so that she does more damage in her first skill? Because if I don't, then her first skill feels a bit weak to play. Maybe it's skillish on my part. Maybe that's why Silverwolf feels worse to play for me. But I just feel like Evanesia offers more agency, more fluidity, and honestly slightly better strength. And she's definitely more free-to-play friendly. You know, I'd say the only unit in this tier list that I'd maybe say suffers from being slightly free-to-play unfriendly is Silverwolf 999, because you have to pull 3 version 4 units, whereas for Evanesia, you only need 1 version 4 unit. Well, no, actually, sorry, you need 2 version 4 units, including herself, Yaoguang as well, but then instead of Sparksy, you get to use EMC, and then you can pick up both of them have free sustainers, so yeah, I'd say right now, for free-to-plays, I would personally invest in Evanesia over Silverwolf 999, which is why I'm going to go ahead and place her higher, and why I might put Silverwolf down in the future. But hey, if Silverwolf gets better teammates, maybe she'll shoot up to the top. Just as things stands, personally, I prefer Silverwolf. Maybe this will be my hot take. So yeah, if I were to give 3 hot takes, I'd say Silverwolf, still an SS tier unit, don't get it twisted. I don't think she's underpowered. I just think Evanesia is a bit stronger. Other hot take, Phynon feels really, really bad to play A tier unit, and then Saber is a unit who I would basically not recommend anyone to pull for. If you do pull for her, you can still kind of make her work in some endgame. I just would rather pull Blade over Saber. I will say right now, Blade, you can get this E1 off standard banner. You can get his E1 from losing a 50-50s. He actually has teammates he works really well with. Do not pull Saber. Just build yourself a Blade. If you already have a Blade, build him. If you get his E1 from standard banner, even better. Or if you don't have a Blade, you probably don't pull for him. But if you do lose your 50-50 and get one, just use Blade over Saber unless you love Fate. Yeah, those are my personal hot takes. But end of the day, this is just my personal opinion, my personal thoughts, my personal biases. Don't base your pulls based off what I said. End of the day, just pull whoever you like, whatever you like. This is just my opinion of the strongest E0S0 units that are most worth investing into right now. But like I said, just my personal opinions. Everyone's free to differ in their opinions. If you want to discuss it down below, make sure to keep it civil, but I'm open to all discussion. It is quite fun to hear other people's thoughts. Let me know what you think about my 3 hot takes of Silverwolf being worse than Evanescence, as well as Phynon now being an A-tier unit who fell off really hard, and then Saber being a B-tier unit who you shouldn't pull, just pull for Blade instead, as the #1 Blade fan. But yeah, like I said, end of the day, pull who you want, just my personal opinions. This is not an objective tier list. It's just as close to my perceptions of these characters as I can get. It is not a empirical tier list. So like I said, just treat this as a bit of fun, and you can let me know your thoughts down below. With that being said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.